welcome back to another episode, an exciting conversation on the Worthy for 30 podcast. I'm your host, Eric Tash, and with me today is a longtime friend and former colleague, Helaine Knapp, the CEO and founder of CITYROW. Helaine, welcome to the Worthy for 30 podcast.
Thanks, Eric. Happy to be here. Good to see you.
Excellent. So Helaine and I were catching up. She, a New York born and bred startup founder who moved to Miami. And is it like you walk out your front door in Miami and you're running into other founders and investors? Like, because again, I'm looking at my Twitter feed and everyone's saying Miami is the next Silicon Valley or Silicon Alley. So love to hear, from your firsthand experience, what you're seeing.
Yeah, I mean, Eric, I'm going to be honest. I came here for the beach and the sunshine and the accessibility to tennis courts. And part of the reason I moved down here is I had a whole bunch of friends that made the early move during the pandemic. So I knew there'd be this contingency of ex-New Yorkers. And there really is a lot going on down here, way more than I thought. This is not Boca. This is not Palm Beach. This is not your grandma's town for the most part.
Right.
There's something to do every night if you wanted to in the space, for sure.
Oh, wow. Excellent. So, Helaine, the way I usually like to start these conversations, especially with founders and entrepreneurs, is really getting an understanding of your journey from, I know you and I work together at Buddy Media to founding CITYROW. I'd love to hear about that journey. And what was that insight or tipping point that said, you know what, there's a business behind rowing. So, yeah, we'd love to hear your founding story.
Okay, sure, Eric. Well, I'll take it a little bit step back because when I kind of think back to the real why behind CITYROW, it probably started with me as just like a much chubbier, shy kid growing up. Which I think if you were to meet me now, like shy, no way, right? Like I can talk to a wall if I need to. But that was me kind of growing up in an insecure teenage girl and then really kind of found my groove in college and post-college and found myself working. My first job out of college was working at Condé Nast. I was actually like, a sales assistant, made like $28,000 a year, and I was helping sell magazine ads. But I was also going through a personal wellness journey. And so after college, I was like, okay, I'm going to work out. I'm going to feel good about myself. I'm going to like try Weight Watchers, whatever it took. And I was like on this personal journey, which led me to find boutique fitness. And I'm not going to lie to you, Eric, I was a basic first row Soul Cycle, booking that treaded berries really early. And this is like before there was a plethora of supply, right? There was a reason it was called boutique is because it was really quite exclusive to some degree. So I was definitely part of that community and starting to work at Buddy Media, I was working like crazy. And so then I found out that like the only way I could hold myself accountable and go to the gym was by book these classes. So picture me, right? I'm a type A. I have a lot of energy. And so these classes were incredible. And then I could go with friends. So I fell in love with the industry as a consumer first and foremost. And then after a couple of years of doing this, I found myself with actually a pretty bad lower back injury. It developed over time and it forced me to just question what I was doing to my body on a daily and weekly basis. And while I thought that was really good for me, turns out it wasn't. And that realization was really hard because I like to think of myself as someone who does the right thing. And so the fact that I thought I was doing the right thing and it was the wrong thing made me really question everything about the industry and what was going on. And so I forced myself to learn a lot more about what was under the curtain behind these workouts and what was actually going to be right and smart for my body. And my doctor was like, you need a low impact workout. And I didn't know what that was. So that was really, I don't want to call it the tipping point, but that was the thing that pushed me over the edge to do a lot of deep diving and helped me find out pretty quickly my first learning that there was not a lot of workouts out there that were intelligently designed and programmed for people that worked at a desk all day. You know, we're conditioned to think that we're an athlete now when we're in these classes because it makes us feel good, but like we're not athletes, Eric,
Sure,
we work out for an hour a day, we sit a lot. Hopefully we're trying to change that and move our bodies more throughout the day. But there really wasn't something out there that was going to be both fun and exciting and cool, but that also was going to be intelligently designed for the people that we are today in today's world. And when looking for low impact, walking is great. Apparently swimming and cross-country skiing, also fantastic total body low impact workouts, not super accessible. And rowing kept coming up in my discovery. It really kept coming up as this incredible way to move your body, torch calories, low impact, both strength training and cardio. But there was nowhere to do it. And I thought that it was for Winklevoss twins and CrossFit dudes. Did not think it was for me. I really didn't. That was like kind of the foundation of discovery that forced me to
Sure.
just ask more questions and power forward. And then, I had this idea. I was like, I wonder if I can make rowing like sexy and cool and mainstream, right? It's this unsung hero, but it really needs a makeover. And so I quickly realized, what if I paired it with strength training work? To me, that should be perfect. Cardio, strength, it's a HIIT class. And I just started talking about it. The first person I talked to was
Who's that?
Mr. Dan Reich.
Mr. And my next question was going to be a Dan Reich related question. So that's great that you spoke to him. Spoke to him as a soundboard, or like what was the thought process behind, like, who should I talk to, and yes, like, who, and then why Dan? Like, what was the gravitational pull? I think I know the answer, but I'd love to hear from you.
So Dan ends up being my boss for a little while at Buddy Media towards the end there. We
Mhm.
worked really well together. I have utmost respect for him. And I think he always like saw something in me, probably even before I saw it in myself, which is really empowering. And I always knew that I would kind of continue to do well in business in whatever capacity that was. Dan was constantly like finding me new jobs. And I knew that he was going to be one of my biggest supporters in whatever I were to choose to do next. And I went to him first and foremost as a sounding board, right? He's a seasoned entrepreneur, he's successful. And I was like, what do you think? And I still remember the conversation. I remember where I was sitting. It's a conference room at a shared office space in the Lower East Side. He came to visit me and he's like, yeah, Helaine, it's a great idea. We got to do it. Let's do a pop up. Let's do a pop up next weekend. And I was like, kind of taken aback because Dan's not the kind of guy that has like a ton of enthusiasm out the gate. So I was pleasantly surprised, and I was like, okay, thanks. I'm not sure if we can do a pop up, but let's talk about some other ways to do it. And he ended up like pushing me in the direction of assessing demand in a few ways. He ended up being the first check into the business, and a confidant and a mentor to this day. But he was my first person to like help me gut check, is this a good idea or a bad idea? And forever grateful for him. And he's helped me push the company forward many times over the years.
Right, right. And as I like to say, the Buddy Media Alumni Association runs deep. Dan Reich, previous guest twice. Jeff Ragavan, also an investor in CITYROW, an advisor in CITYROW. Two amazing people who like to give while doing well, like you, Helaine. Like to do good and doing well. The thing about Dan, hopefully he doesn't blush, but again, it's on video, it's on recording. I said, I think my question when I was talking to him is like, what did you see in Helaine when you invested in? Because again, I was asking about his investment philosophy, and I think he said, if I'll paraphrase, if Helaine was selling steak knives, I'd support her. I'd back her. Whatever she was selling, I support her. So I think that goes a long way. And what's really interesting, what you're saying, Helaine, and something that I picked up from Dan, when you're evaluating a startup idea, like what you were doing in your discovery, you're starting to think about in terms of why not this and why not me? Why not us? Again, this is a great opportunity. It's ripe. I imagine, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, I imagine there's some apprehension when you're starting something new or that hasn't been done before. What you did at that time was you found a sounding board of someone who's been through the trenches or been in the trenches with starting not just one, but multiple business ideas, whether they're a founder or investor or supporter. So I mean, that's tremendous. So I think, for the people who are listening or who will be listening, asking those questions that Helaine was asking when, the early aughts of CITYROW, but also tapping into your network. Your network is very important, right? And it's not Dan and Jeff. I imagine there's some other people that stand out that you can point to that have been helpful throughout this journey.
Yes, absolutely. I think it's about surrounding yourself with people that have complementary skill sets. And the needs of those complementary skill sets are going to change first and foremost as you change as a founder, as a CEO, as an operator. It's also going to change based off of where the needs are of the business. I've had one mentor almost since the beginning. His name is Mike. He's an investor. He's actually a contractor. And he has been with me every step of the way, whether I need to cry, whether I need to talk through something from a business perspective, whether I need, help on a specific topic, whether it's construction, whether it's bringing in people, whether it's an interpersonal issue. And so I think that your mentors can really run the gamut, right? And then I think about one of our independent board members who came on board about 2 years ago. And ever since I met her, I just wanted to keep learning from her. And I could tell pretty quickly that our brains worked differently, even if we had similar vision, similar goal, and mutual respect for each other. And
Hmm.
I think that that's some of the most powerful conversations because, how you have to bring people around you that are not just going to agree with everything you say, right? But how are they going to
Hmm.
challenge you and be able to communicate with you effectively so that you can hear and listen to them? And, Sharon is someone who I can go to on a, she's a marketing genius, but I can really go to her with anything. And I believe
Hmm.
in her kind of moral compass and core. And so, she wasn't there in the first 5 years. I'm not sure I could have taken advantage of her then, but, where the company is now, I can call her for almost anything. And I know that she's the right sounding board for this thing. And so these things really ebb and change and flow. And like, for instance, Dan Ray, right? He was there at pivotal moments throughout the journey. We might maybe haven't spoken deeply in 4 years, but now things are happening and I'm calling him on a regular basis. So it's about like, I see myself as a quarterback and I have a big
Hmm.
bench of people. And depending on the play, I got to put someone different in for the play.
That speaks to a lot of self awareness as a founder, because you're saying to yourself, I might not be strong in this area, but I know someone who is. So what do you say to that founder who wants to do it all?
Oh, I mean, I think that's a red flag. I mentor a lot of early stage founders, and I talk a lot. If you've like ever listened to me or seen any of my writing, like self awareness really is everything because it's one thing to be able to say everything that you're good at, but it's even more powerful to acknowledge the areas that you're not good at because that means you can solve for it, and that means that you're not afraid to be a little bit vulnerable to say I'm actually not good at that. And so it's my favorite question to ask a founder is like, okay, what are the areas that you're just really not good at? And how are you solving for that? If someone give me a really good answer for that, they can probably tackle anything in the future.
Very, very, very interesting. So, one thing I want to talk about when you were starting City Row, and even in today, when you were looking at the landscape of fitness, boutique fitness, connected fitness, in studio fitness, how many female founders have founded or founded businesses? Over the past, was it 10 years that City Row has been around?
Oh my God, I don't know what that stat is, Eric. Do you have it?
It, it, I don't know. I just want again. I'm just interested to hear. Is this at the top again? You built this business from idea to studio fitness, connected fitness. If you go to cityrow.com, you can find where the City Row locations. In New York City and other parts of the country, as well as learn about the connected rower. But as a female founder, is a lonely? I don't know. Again, I want to. Again, empathy is about putting yourself in other people's shoes. Compassion is putting yourself in other people's shoes and doing something about it. So this is a big passion point for this show. Is how do we help the underrepresented entrepreneur or the female and the minority founder to again have that seat at the table and have that voice at the table and change the
Yeah, I
narrative.
think everyone depending on what their day to day is, where they sit in this world, is going to be able to have a different impact on whatever cause they choose to tackle. As I think like helping early stage founders, particularly women, is something I'm very passionate about just because I have been there. I launched CityRow 10 years ago, which is a crazy stat, Eric, considering,
Right.
I'm still 25. But it's it's something that I've personally gravitated towards just given what I've done over the past 10 years. And I think at this point, I want to be the person that I was always looking for as an early stage founder. I want to be the person that a young founder can come to and be vulnerable. It's really hard to be vulnerable to whether it's an investor, doesn't matter how close you are to them. There's always an element of you wanting to kind of, show them that this has got big legs to it, right? And then your
Hmm.
employees are often really hard to share with because you also need to keep them really inspired. And so I think the role that I, hope to play, and I do this with some of my advising roles or early stage investing, is to sit alongside that founder and try and be their family, be their
Hmm.
partner in this. And for every founder, that means something different. And that relationship kind of is curated depending on what's needed. But I think that particularly women, just because I am one and I've been
Right.
there, I've seen the ability to have an outsized impact when it comes to not just building the business, but also the emotional pieces that come alongside this and being a founder and being lonely and understanding all the intricacies of running a business, managing a board, building a team. Like
Sure.
there's no school to go to for entrepreneurship, right? There's no school to go to for being a founder. There's incubators, there's accelerators, there's a
Hmm.
lot of great tools out there, but I want to be, and I am for a lot of people, that mentor that people can call to not only talk through things, but also to kind of give them a peek around what's coming around the next bend and how can we position both you and the company a little bit better for what's to come.
Right. And that brings me to my one of the questions that I sent through before our conversation today is that there's this Mike Tyson quote, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth, which I think is apropos for founders because you have COVID. Okay, that's a big black swan event that, hopefully once in a lifetime, where as a founder you have to react to. But CityRow Go, for instance, the connected rower, to take a step back, a lot of people bought connected fitness equipment during the pandemic because we didn't know when we were going to return to gyms or when we were going to return to in-person physical fitness. But CityRow Go was in the queue way before the pandemic hit, right?
Oh
Is
yeah.
that because?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So go
Dan
ahead.
Wright wanted me to launch that in 2016. It took me till 2018, but we were very far ahead of the curve on that, luckily.
Right, right, right. Luckily, but are there other instances where, again, whether it's that quote or that resolve, that resilience, that grit that you can speak to some of those inflection points where, yeah, that the high you can't get your highs too high or lows too low. Like what yeah, would love to hear some of those anecdotes and how you persisted and pulled through to the other side.
Yeah, I talk about this a lot. And I don't know if we've shared this, but I wrote a book during COVID. It's called Making Waves. It will come out early next year, and I talk a lot about this element of resilience, or like as I pull that string, it's resilience, but it's also resilience alongside creative problem solving. And it's probably something, and I unpacked this a little bit, but I've like always been really good at puzzles and games. Like I just love figuring things out. And I think that like there's grit and resilience is one thing, but you need that alongside the ability to actually creatively solve a problem. And I think that that's probably why City Row is still here 10 years later, is not just the ability to power through, but to kind of channel that kind of, those challenges into figuring out what the right solution is. And, people are like, you pull the rabbits out of your hat left and right. And sure, that's magic, but I think that that magic is actually just like really unique problem solving. And so I
Hmm.
talk about that a lot. It's like when you're down, you have 2 weeks left of payroll. Like, how are you going to power through that? How are you going to think differently, right? How are you going to
Hmm.
leverage existing investors, new conversation, debt instruments, right? And it kind of goes back to our previous conversation around who do you have on your bench?
Hmm.
Because I also know that I am not the perfect problem solver for every topic. So, for instance, like when I have a weird finance thing, like I know who to call, right?
Hmm.
I when I have a weird legal thing, I know who to call. Right? When I want to think about alternative ways to like raise equity or do unique fundraising things, I know who to call. And so it's
Hmm.
really about leveraging those relationships, not being afraid to call a favor and not be afraid to be vulnerable with these people. Right? Someone can only help you if they understand everything. And that kind of comes back to that self-awareness element and this kind of secondary element to that of like being vulnerable enough to admit when you don't know something, right? So if I've been
Right.
having like, let's say for instance, we're having cash flow issues, right? So many startups have cash flow issues. We've run out of money like 4 times. It's really not fun. And I'm exploring like, should we take a loan from Stripe, right? So I have to be able to be in an environment with someone that I trust to be able to ask the dumb questions to, right? I can't pretend like I am the know-it-all CEO founder who's supposed to know everything. You have to have people around you that you trust enough to be able to like ask the full spectrum of questions to be able to get to that creative solution with all the information behind it. So it really is about like taking a couple steps back, bringing people around you, having the grit and the resilience, but also alongside creative problem solving.
Creative problem solving. It's very interesting that you bring that up. So I had Paulina from the profile who's coming out with a book called Hidden Genius, and her whole speaking with the David Goggins of the world. Those folks subscribe that have their own mental models, like to what you're alluding to. There are going to be times that are tough, but if I tap into those mental model and that mental checklist of okay, what are the questions I need to ask? Who do I need to go to? They're much more tolerable than if it's like, oh shit, like what am I going to do? I'm running out of money as a startup founder. Like, uh oh. you, Helaine, it sounds like, again, you're taking this proactive approach. You're taking a step back of like, what are the questions I need to ask, and who do I need to ask those to myself, to me, or do I need to ask them to other people that I surround myself with? And the thing that Paulina really pulled out is whether you're a startup founder or a David Goggins, for example, these aren't, extraordinary and remarkable people. They're normal, regular people like you and I. But again, they've created these mental models, and they've unlocked that hidden genius, quote unquote, to get themselves through these challenging times. So again, as you mentioned, it goes back to that humility as a founder, that self awareness as a founder, to again surround yourself with really good people and people that complement your skill set. One thing that I definitely want to talk about is this book. And you said it's coming out next year. You said it's Making Waves.
Yeah, let's do it.
Making waves. And do you have an exact date of when this is coming out? Because I got to
That to
pre-order.
me.
I got to tell my listeners to pre-order as well. So
Oh, don't worry, Eric. You'll get the link. I can count on you for what, 5,000 copies?
sure.
So yeah, no, it was a honestly, it started out as a passion project during COVID, with a friend of mine who's always kind of encouraged me to consider book writing. And I didn't really know what that would be, but COVID was such a crazy time, as you alluded to. We
Mm-hmm.
had this digital piece, we had early franchise system, like one was like start like decimated, the other boomed for a little while, then it busted alongside. Like it has been a truly insane journey, and it was really fun to get the stories out. I mean, I have so many stories I didn't even remember all of the ones until I started talking about it. And then we started to really extract out what some key lessons and learnings would be alongside telling the great stories a la a memoir, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So it's what we call a prescriptive memoir. It talks a little bit about me. We get a chapter in early childhood, Helaine, which is really fun. A lot of references to my grandma, which people have a lot of fans of my grandma in this world. If you follow me on Instagram, and then just like talking a little bit, we unpack, we double click, we triple click on the founding story and the why. We talk a lot about my injury and how I got there, and how I really didn't mean to start a rowing studio. Do you know what I mean? Like I was a budding tech exec. I had a bright future ahead of me in account services and sales and SaaS. My dad was like, okay, great, I got one kid off payroll. Do you know what I mean? Like I had this great career ahead of me. I probably would have worked for Jeff Ragavan for the rest of my life. You know what I mean? And so
Sure.
I think it's like what kind of gave me the confidence too to say, to your point earlier, why not me? Why not now? Why not this? And I had the backing, I had the support, I had the bench to try it, to make that
Mm-hmm.
first play. And then, okay, that play kind of worked, right? It wasn't a touchdown, but we got a first down. Was that a good? Did I do a
That's
good
a
football
good
reference there?
analogy, right? Yeah. Yes,
So
you move the ball up the field, right?
yeah, Michigan grad right here.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
I extracted something from those 4 years in Ann Arbor. So all to say is that it's a deep dive of the stories and the challenges, but it also kind of categorizes some of the biggest learnings. One of those is problem solving. I talk a lot about being a female founder. I have a chapter that's called "Crying Big Tears is the Least of My Problems." I'm a crier, Eric, and I've cried at inopportune times before. I talk about mistakes I've made, whether it was at Buddy Media, whether it was at Olympic, my second tech company, or whether it was at CityRow, whether it was in a board
Mm-hmm.
meeting, whether it was in a partner meeting, or whether it was with my team. And I'm not afraid to share those missteps because I really do hope people can learn from them.
Exactly. Again, it's that giving component. It's you're not remiss to mention all the people that have been supportive throughout your journey and who helped get you to this place, leading CityRow, over the past 10 years. And you're saying to yourself, okay, how can I give back? How can I? And it's not necessarily a playbook, but how can I give a firsthand perspective of what I went through? I imagine there's some self doubt, and you mentioned vulnerability. Like, should I be doing this? I have this bright career ahead of me in tech, which is quote unquote, it's not, now you look at all the layoffs at Facebook and Google. It's like, is it really safe? I don't know. But there's one quote that keeps coming up, as I have these conversations with folks like yourself, Helaine, which is a Steve Jobs quote. You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect the dots looking back. So looking back on the past 10 years, what were those dots that you collected that allowed you to be where you are today?
Oh man, that's a great quote. Honestly, I think the dots are people to some degree. Like, I know I keep coming back to this analogy of being a quarterback, but you really when I look back and I think about all the moments and the voice of this book is that I really want to add a new voice to the startup world that talks about the underbelly. I want to talk about what it really takes. I want to talk about not just rainbows and butterflies. Like, I
Mm,
want this to be the book that gives you a real insight into what happens and what happened to me. And that, like, it was pretty rough. I am not going to lie, right? People that just see, oh, I'm on podcasts, we got articles, we're open locations left and right. There's no room in social media, on LinkedIn, on Facebook for, holy fuck, we ran out of money. I can't pay myself. Oh my God, I have an issue with a board member. Oh my God, we're being sued. Oh my God, I'm being sued again. Oh my God, the landlord's coming after us. There's no space for that. And I think that had I had a space for that, or had
mm,
I had places where I could look and watch, it would have made, to your point earlier around, like, you never know what's going to happen until you punch in the face, or you ever have a plan until you punch in the face.
right.
This is basically like a, let me tell you all the ways you can get punched in the face. And by the way, you are going to get punched in the face. So be prepared to be punched in the face over and over and over and over again. Here are some ways that I was punched in the face. And not that you're going to have the same problem that you're going to have to get through, but that, like, emotionally and from a surrounding myself with great people, here's how I overcame those punches. And so
Mm,
that's the voice that I wanted to bring into it. And I think, to your point on dots and reflecting back, I mean, I think that that's basically what this book is about. It's taking all of those little moments that I never, in the moment were really not super, crazy, pinnacle, and realizing that they all tied together and they were all part of my story and my journey and my personal growth. There's a mistake that I remember making at my first job when I was at Condé Nast. I was a sales assistant and I worked for a lot of powerful women. And I was also, like, I was pretty techy, as you can
mm-hmm.
imagine. Like, I loved technology. I loved learning about things. And so, like, I was the one that was, like, building decks and doing the Excel stuff. And, like, I was the assistant that everyone knew could, like, go and figure anything out on the computer. And I remember that my one boss just, like, could not figure out Excel. And she would call me over, like, every 3 minutes when she was trying to do something. And, like, at one point I snapped at her. I snapped at her and I got passive aggressive. 22 years old. And I think that there was a part of me that probably felt like I wasn't giving enough. I wasn't, like, I wasn't being recognized for everything I could do. I mean, I was a little sales assistant. I've been there for like 8 months or so. And I was probably just, like, ready to do more and be given more responsibility, but there was no growth. And I got in trouble. Like, I got, like, really in trouble. I was, like, taken into a conference room and someone sat me down. I think I cried, whether it was during or after, because I'm not someone that gets in trouble, Eric. And
Okay.
I made
I'll take
mistakes.
your word for it.
Yeah, I mean, I try not to get in trouble. I
You try not to get in
toe the
trouble.
line. I try to
Right.
toe the line a little bit, but in retrospect, like, it helped me learn politics. It helped me learn hierarchy. It helped me learn respect. And I'm really grateful for that particular stepping stone, because I think everyone should be an assistant. I think everyone's got to start at the bottom. And I think that had I not started at the bottom, I wouldn't have been in the right position to join Buddy Media, right? Where there was a hierarchy. And there was, like, I mean, I had bosses many times over where I was like, they could do their job better than them. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And over time, like, I'm sure I made mistakes there too. I remember a couple of them. But I think that they were all kind of part of the stepping stone in learning interpersonal. There were times where, like, I should have shown up a little bit stronger and better for my CITYROW team, right? I should have been able to rise up and not let them see whatever emotion I was dealing with. I wasn't capable at the time. But those were all learnings that only come as you connect the dots looking back.
Right. As yes, as you go through them, like right, as you mentioned, like in the moment, you like you don't know the significance, but when you take a step back and you see, like, okay, oh yeah, this is a real a nugget. It was an unfortunate experience, getting sat down because I spoke back passive aggressively to my boss, but again, it helped inform future Helaine.
Yeah, and I think, the other thing is that when you're going through something that's really intense, I think that I'll speak for myself, right? You talk about these like moments of extra grit and extra resilience. You have to keep blinders on, right? Like part of the reason that I was able to power through is that I was tunnel focused on finding a solution. Every time I would take a step back and be like, holy shit, the significance of this moment. Oh my God, we've run out of money. Oh my God, the credit cards that are tied to my personal name, like we're screwed. That's not helpful in that moment. And so you really can only look at those dots retrospectively or retroactively because in the moment, it's actually, at least for me, it's too much emotion. It's too much energy on something when you need to focus all of your energy on a solution, not the magnitude of the problem.
Focus on the solution. Oh, that's good. I hope hopefully that's a quote that
Okay, write that down.
I'm gonna write that down and especially call that out, pull that out of the conversation transcript. No,
Actually.
no, this has been great, Helaine. As you mentioned, and again, I've known Helaine 10 plus years, longer than CITYROW has been in existence, and can't speak high enough of Helaine's character. You know what she's saying. Again, this ability to again put yourself yes to take a step back, to have that humility, to have that self awareness, to show up when you need to show up. Maybe I didn't show up this time. What I'm really getting at is, you're not going to go on social media and see Helaine putting some accolade from some very well-known publication, touting this accolade. No, the proof is in the pudding in terms of the product that she's putting out and taking care of her employees and her team and the community that she and her team has built over the 10 plus years, which is tremendous. Because one of the things, as I was preparing for this conversation is looking at watching a previous conversation that you had, Helaine, is we're in the business of changing people's lives. So I love, to end this conversation between you and I on what is the impact, if you can articulate it, what has been the impact that CITYROW has had on people's lives beyond the rower?
Oh man, I think you have to ask them individually. I know that for people that have fallen in love with our product and our programming, they've found a new way to move their body where they feel really good, right? They've probably pushed themselves, they've challenged themselves, they've achieved new goals, which is always wonderful. But I like to think that they've started to figure out that there's a way to do it in a very mentally healthy way too. Our instructors are funny. Like we're not here to beat you down. We're here to really build you up and empowering in a smart way. And so I think that from a client and a CITYROW customer perspective, I think we've really helped people move their bodies and have fun with smart movement. And then, the team and our partners, whether it's our franchisees or people we've worked with, I think again, you'd have to ask them, but I think that our team is motivated intrinsically by what we're doing. And I think that really shows up in everyone's like strong work ethic each and every day. And I generally like each other, which, I will only do business moving forward with people that I like. You don't want to be stuck with them in the classic airport. Like they're probably not for you. And so one of the things I'm most proud of is that both Annie and Ashley, the founding members of this team and my partners in the business, we are still doing this together 10 years later. And I think that is probably what am going to be most proud of when I look back and connect the dots in the next
Look at
15,
that.
20 years.
It is amazing because you read stories of startup founders who one of the founders leaves a couple of years after it's founded and they go on their separate way. But again, that just speaks to the environment and the culture that Helaine and her team have fostered, since CITYROW's founding. What was I going to say? Yeah, but I would love to see, again, how these next chapters for CITYROW evolves. And I know what I was going to say. Danny Meyer, the founder of Union Square Hospitality, said in order to have a great customer experience, you need to take care of the workers, the wait staff, the people behind the bar, the bartenders. And what it sounds like, not to put words in your mouth, is, you fostered a culture where everyone loves to show up to work at CITYROW. And by loving to show up to work at CITYROW, the people who use the product, whether in studio or in their home, from the comfort of their home, find it enjoyable. It's that, yes, it's a workout, like, oh shit, 45 minutes, an hour, I have to work out and sweat and schwitz and whatever, but I'm going to enjoy it at least. It's time well spent because, as you mentioned, it's that mental component that they walk away with, in addition to the physical component, the physical empowerment, being able to to move around a little bit easier after
I think so.
working out.
Let's hope. I hope. I
Yeah.
hope so.
Again, we'll see. As a call to action for the people who are going to be listening, cityrow.com to find out more about Helaine and CityRow and where to find the nearest studio, as well as to learn about their connected fitness equipment. Having CityRow in your house. So, any other short places where people can find you, Helaine?
Yeah, just HelaineKnapp.com if you want to find or learn more about me specifically. CityRow.com. You can also find us at CityRow on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Pick your poison.
Pick your poison. Pick your social media poison. Well, Helaine, it's always a pleasure to catch up and to speak with you and to hear about the City Row story. And again, it's a to be continued story with a very bright future. So again, I appreciate your time this afternoon.
Thanks, Eric. Thanks for having me.